If you are raising a child with ADHD, I need you to hear this. The guilt you carry every single day, the feeling that you're failing them, that you're doing something wrong, that other parents have figured something out that you haven't, that guilt is lying to you. And today, I'm going to show you exactly why. Because parenting a child with ADHD isn't just hard, it's a completely different job than parenting a neurotypical child. And nobody told you that when you signed up. You weren't given a different manual, you were just handed a different child and expected to figure it out using advice that was never designed for them. So if you've ever sat in your car, parked in the driveway, engine off, too exhausted to even walk inside, this video is for you. The lie you've been telling yourself. Most of us come into parenthood with a picture in our heads. Kids who listen, mornings that run smoothly, a house that feels mostly in control. And then ADHD shows up, and suddenly every morning is a battle over shoes, every dinner is a negotiation, every school pickup comes with a note or a look from the teacher or another story about something your kid did that you have to figure out how to respond to, again. And because you love your child so completely, you start to do something really painful. You start to blame yourself. If I were more patient, they'd be calmer. If I were more organized, our mornings wouldn't be chaos. If I were a better parent, a stronger parent, this would be easier. Here's what I need you to hear. ADHD is not a parenting failure. It is a neurodevelopmental difference. That means your child's brain, from the very beginning, was wired in a way that makes self-control, focus, and planning genuinely, biologically harder for them than it is for other kids. It has nothing to do with discipline, nothing to do with diet, though that's a whole other conversation, nothing to do with how much you love them or how hard you try. Think of it this way. ADHD has been described as having a Ferrari engine, powerful, fast, full of potential, paired with bicycle brakes. Your child isn't choosing to forget their homework. They're not deciding to melt down over a sock. Their brakes just don't work the way other kids' brakes do. And you, every single day, you are showing up to be their external brakes, their external memory, their external regulation system. That is not a small thing. That is an enormous thing. And the fact that you're exhausted doesn't make you a bad parent. It makes you human. Now, I want to go somewhere a little deeper. This part might surprise you. ADHD is one of the most heritable conditions we know of, more heritable than most personality traits, more heritable than many physical characteristics, which means, statistically, there's a real chance that some version of what your child is going through, you've lived it too. Maybe you always felt like you were too much, too loud, too scattered, too emotional, too everything. Maybe you were the kid who always forgot things, always running late, always in trouble for something you genuinely didn't mean to do. And now you're watching your child go through something that looks painfully familiar, and it stirs something in you that you don't quite have words for. This is what some clinicians call the mirror effect. When your child struggles, it doesn't just stress you out, it activates old shame, old wounds, the part of you that spent years feeling like you weren't quite right, weren't quite enough. So when they can't get out the door on time, it's not just frustrating, it hits something deeper, because you know that feeling, and you spent your whole life trying to hide it. I want to offer you something today. Something simple but real. A permission slip. You are allowed to grieve. You're allowed to feel the pain of realizing that life is going to be harder for your child than it is for their peers. You're allowed to feel the loss of the version of parenting you imagined. You're allowed to grieve the fact that your child is their own person, with their own brain, and no amount of effort on your part can simply change that. Because if you don't let yourself feel it, if you keep pushing it down and saying, "We're fine, it's fine," it doesn't disappear. It hardens. And hardened parents become distant parents, or angry parents, or parents who give up in quiet, invisible ways. But parents who grieve, who actually let themselves feel the weight of this, those parents find compassion for their child and, maybe even harder, for themselves. Shepherd, not engineer. Dr. Russell Barkley, one of the leading researchers on ADHD in the world, uses a metaphor that I think about all the time. He says you need to see yourself as a shepherd, not an engineer. An engineer designs something, builds it. If the bridge collapses, that's on the engineer. They're responsible for the outcome. But a shepherd? A shepherd doesn't build the sheep. A shepherd creates the conditions, provides safety, guides without controlling, and trusts that the animal will grow into what it was already meant to be. Your child's ADHD is not your design, and it cannot be engineered away. What can change, what research consistently shows, is the quality of the relationship between you. One stable, safe, loving relationship with a parent is one of the strongest predictors of resilience in a child with ADHD. More than medication, more than any specific intervention, the relationship is the intervention. So what does that look like in real life? It looks like when your kid is melting down at 7 in the morning over a cleat and you feel that heat rising in your chest, you take one breath, just one, and instead of fighting them, you get on their side. You say out loud or just in your head, "He's not the problem. The time pressure is the problem. We're both struggling here." And then you get next to them, literally, physically next to them. "Hey, I know this is hard. Let's figure it out together." That shift from adversary to ally is everything. It doesn't solve the morning, but it changes the meaning of the morning. It tells your child, "I am not against you. Even when things fall apart, I am on your team." The power of repair. Okay, let's be honest about something. You're going to lose it sometimes. You're going to say something sharp, forget something important, react from your worst self instead of your best. Because you are a person, a tired, trying their hardest person, but still a person. And when that happens, the voice inside is going to be brutal. See, this is why they're struggling. It's you. You're the problem. I want to give you a different frame. Your child doesn't need a perfect parent. Research on child development is actually pretty clear on this. What kids need is not a parent who never makes mistakes. What they need is a parent who repairs. Repair looks like this. You go to them, maybe an hour later, maybe that evening, and you sit down and you say, simply, clearly, "Hey, I want to talk about earlier. I yelled at you and that wasn't okay. That was about my frustration, not about you." Then you get curious. How did that feel for you? And you let them tell you, even if it's hard to hear. And then you make a plan. Next time I feel myself getting there, I'm going to take a breath and walk away for a minute before I talk. That's it. That's repair. And here's why it's so powerful, especially for a child with ADHD. When you apologize, you are not showing weakness. You are demonstrating something that will serve your child for the rest of their life. You are showing them that relationships don't require perfection. They require accountability. You're teaching them with your actions how to handle their future mistakes, how to come to someone and say, "I got that wrong. I want to do better." Your child may not remember every time you lost your patience, but they will remember how safe it felt to come to you with their failures because they watched you handle yours. That is not a small inheritance to leave them. That is enormous. Finding the ocean. There's a quote that's often attributed to Einstein, though honestly the origin doesn't matter. What matters is that it's true. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. That's what happens to so many ADHD kids. They grow up in systems designed for a different kind of brain. They are graded, disciplined, and compared against a standard they were never built to meet. And slowly, quietly, they start to believe the grade. They start to think they're the problem. Your job, one of the most important jobs you have, is to help your child find their ocean, not to make them better at climbing trees, but to help them discover the environment where their brain actually shines. Because ADHD brains are often remarkable. They hyper-focus on things they love with an intensity that most people never experience. They are often creative in ways that break rules in the best sense possible. They feel deeply, they connect quickly, and in a crisis, when everyone else freezes, they can come alive. These are not consolation prizes, these are real strengths, but your child can only discover them if someone is paying attention to the right things. So start looking, not at what's hard, at what lights them up. What makes them forget time? What do they talk about with actual joy? So the next time you're in that car, sitting in the driveway, engine off, too tired to move, I want you to remember something. You are doing one of the hardest things a person can do. You are raising a human being whose brain works differently in a world that wasn't designed for them, without a manual, without a break, and without enough credit. You don't have to be a perfect parent. You just have to be a safe place for them to land. That's it. That's the whole job. Show up, repair when you break, get on their team, look for their ocean, and please, please give yourself some of the grace you so freely give to your child. You are not a bad parent. You are exactly the parent your child needs. Someone who is learning and struggling and trying and staying. That is enough. That has always been enough.